Whether you're in North or South Carolina or anywhere else in the world, enter the Cat Cave to listen to your favorite Carolina Panthers podcast as a part of the Keep Pounding Podcast Network and powered by the Fans First Sports Network, where you can find shows like Embrace, Debate, and Inside the Vault. Got a special guest with us this week. He has been a guest on some of Michael Davis's podcast. Shannon Smith is here with us to talk all things Carolina Panthers post week 4. Shannon, how's it going, bud? Appreciate you being on the show with us this week.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. This is going real good, man. Just enjoying the football. Glad it's back in session. It's going great, man.
Yeah, I think we're enjoying football in general probably more than most Carolina fans are enjoying football right now, unfortunately. So let's get right into it. The Carolina Panthers, if you've been living under a rock, fall at home to the Vikings this past week. Shannon, what's your first reaction to watching this game? I mean, the Panthers had a 13-7 lead at halftime. They were driving again, go in the third quarter, and a sack fumble leads to, a lead taken by the Vikings that they never gave up. What's your initial reaction to watching this game?
It was a surprise to me. I saw Carolina win in this game. Minnesota is a wild card squad to me. Kirk Cousins reminds me of Rex Grossman. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you remember Rex Grossman. There were games where Rex Grossman did really, really great, and then there were games where Rex Grossman will go out, and he'd be horrible. So Kirk Cousins reminds me a little bit of Rex Grossman, and he had shades of a not so great game in the first half. So I was like, Carolina, I think they'll get this. I think they will. That pick six was big, and I called it a user pick when I put it on Facebook. I said that was a user pick. That was 99 yards, and that set the tone for the first half. But in the second half, they just came out flat, and Minnesota was able to cash in, especially in the corners when Kirk Cousins was throwing the ball. Of course, when you got somebody like Justin Jefferson, who is a big-time receiver, big game receiver, and he knew when to expose the spots of the secondary, and Minnesota came away with the win. Wasn't happy about it, didn't like it, but when you don't close games out, that's what happens.
No, I'm right there with you. And let's go to the offensive side of the ball here. You mentioned that the tone was set by the defense early in this game. That 99-yard interception return by Sam Franklin in the first quarter sort of set the tone that like this might be a defensive battle, or maybe that the Vikings don't have much of a defense. So our defense, the Panthers defense, is going to have to step up and sort of put some stuff together. But I think it's more of the same since we've seen Bryce Young's debut this season. Obviously, last week with Andy Dalton playing, the offense I felt like got to work a little bit better and function a little bit better under a guy who's been in the league for quite some time. Bryce Young, I believe, 204 yards is his career high so far. 25 of 32 passing, no touchdowns, no turnovers outside of the sack fumble that he suffered. But he was sacked 5 times in this game, including that sack fumble. And if I'm nothing, I'm a homer, which I've made very clear on this and all of my shows. Former Gamecock DJ Wanham took that to the house for the Minnesota Vikings. I still think the concern here on offense is the fact that they can't get anything going on the ground. Chuba Hubbard led rushing this game with 14 carries, 41 yards, 2.9 yards a tote. I believe Miles Sanders had 1 fewer carry, but I believe he was only 1.9 yards per carry in this game. And then obviously you've got the general leader that's, the consistent leader receiving the ball so far since week 2 in Adam Thielen. 5 for 14 on third downs, still not getting it done. 6 penalties in this game for 80 yards. That's 6 penalties is on the low end, but 80 yards is a lot of yards to give up for free. And the crazy thing is they won the time of possession by almost 17 minutes in this game, but having time of possession obviously doesn't account for losing the game. What did you see from the offense? I know you said in the second half they fell flat. To me, I just don't think they're allowing, I don't know if it's the offensive line or if it's lack of vision, but Bryce Young is not stretching the ball down the field. What's your take on the offense here through week 4 of the season?
I look at it like this. When you talked about Andy Dalton, who played last week, and then Bryce coming back, I don't care if you've played 20 years in the league or 2 years in the league as a quarterback. If you don't have time to throw the ball, you're going to do absolutely nothing. And that's what I'm seeing here. Bryce Young has not had enough time to throw the ball. Now he's getting the check downs and everything down pat. He learned this offensive playbook when he came in the door. He was learning it. He knew he was installing protections. He's pretty much given this offense and it's in his hands. But I don't care who your quarterback is. When your line doesn't give you time, it's hard to make plays. Now, when you brought up the fact that he threw for 204 yards, which was his career day, there was no touchdowns. One thing about the offense that really got me is that when they got to the red zone, they just couldn't cash it in. And when you get to that red zone, of course, that defense is going to be tough. That defense is going to be bringing in everything. But then again, the defense is going to have their head on the swivel because play action can be used, draw plays can be used, passes in the backfield can be used. The playbook opens up in the red zone. It's going to be very, very hard to stop anything in the red zone if you don't mix it up. And to me, the Panthers just couldn't get it done. There were times they didn't slam the door. When they had the 10-0 lead, there were times where they got to the red zone. There were times where they got past the 50 and couldn't get it into the end zone. That separates good teams from great teams when you're able to go out there and you're able to score it in the red zone, when you're able to score it past the 50. And the Panthers have a ways to go. The running game was something because, there were times where Bryce would make good passes. Thielen, again, had great catches in the game. But when it was given to the running game couldn't get it done. 2.9 yards per carry isn't going to get you anything in the league. And it's going to be hard to manufacture points when you can't mix it up because you got to have a variation of run and pass. I don't think the Panthers have found their backfield guy yet. I think they're still looking for him. They found their quarterback. I still have a lot of faith in Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young will be fine, but he's got to have that offensive line's got to have some work, and that running game's got to have some work, definitely.
So right now, my concern, first of all, I'm with you. We talked about it on the show last week when Cody was on the show with us. That quite frankly, it doesn't matter who you have at running back if you don't have a line that's going to be able to block for him. You're going to have the 2.9 yards a carry, the 1.9 yards per carry. My concern is the inability to finish on defense. When Andy Dalton played in week 3 against the Seattle Seahawks, the Panthers scored 27 points. They scored a touchdown late in that game to try to make it at least look closer than it was. But he was able to put the ball in the end zone, be it getting the ball in the red zone, getting the ball, first, down and goal, and letting Miles Sanders be able to punch it in. But in this game, and for that matter, the other games that Bryce Young has played, I believe the Panthers have scored 17 points, 10 points, and now 13. For whatever reason, I just don't know why we're not executing the ball with Bryce Young under center. That's not to say, again, he's a rookie quarterback. Even Peyton Manning led the league in interceptions as a rookie. I'm not expecting a guy like Bryce Young to come in and set the world on fire. But when you look over in Houston, and the Texans are a lot better, they look a lot more progressed than the Carolina Panthers are. When you look at Indianapolis, I have been on record to say, on my show and others, that everybody in the front office of the Indianapolis Colts will be without a job in 5 years because of taking Anthony Richardson with the number 3, number 4 overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
But Anthony Richardson was on pace to a career day, like a phenomenal day in week 2 before he went down with a concussion, and looked great in spurts last week. And now it's potentially for him to get Jonathan Taylor back. We talk about having a feature back. That offense could look much different come next week and throughout the season in Indianapolis. So I don't know how to put it into words what it is that I'm trying to say, other than the fact that the Panthers didn't score an offensive touchdown in this game. And when I go back to looking at the Seahawks game again, the Seahawks gave up 27 points to the Panthers. And you could say, well, the Seahawks defense isn't as great as they used to be. And you could also argue that the Seahawks offense or the Seahawks opponent in week 4, the New York Giants, is having a remarkably unremarkable season. But they were able to get 11 sacks on the New York Giants on Monday Night Football in week 4. And so, again, does part of you think that maybe we should let Andy Dalton run this offense for a few weeks and see what we can do? Or do we just need to continue to let Bryce Young get put feet to the fire, take 4 to 5 sacks a game? Because I was a proponent that he needed to play more in the preseason to get it acclimated to what this was going to feel like. And Michael Davis was on this show telling me that I was out of my mind. But it's more of the same in the regular season. Do you think there's a time when we look back and we say, you know what, Andy Dalton should be playing for a while, and Bryce Young needs to sit back and learn a little more?
You know, hindsight is 2020 when you talk about playing Bryce Young in the preseason. If he would have got hurt, you would have never heard the end of it. It would have been, why did they play him in the preseason? It's the RG3 effect.
Of course.
When he was with Washington and they played him in the playoff game and he got hurt, and then they're looking at his career like, if this wouldn't have happened, what would have became of RG3? So you can't really say that, because I think that's a little unfair to say. But I still think that but you got to look at your future. What would it profit the Panthers playing Andy Dalton, knowing he's not your future guy, knowing he's not going to be there for years to come? Andy Dalton's on the back end of his career. So what would it help the Panthers playing a guy on the back end of his career just for a few wins, but sitting out your guy? It's kind of like the effect that my 49ers are having with Trey Lance. You played Trey Lance, he got hurt, and after you have the stuff with Brock Purdy, you deal him away. He didn't get a fair shot. He didn't get a fair chance. You never know, especially in a quarterback position, because you have so many variables that could become of a quarterback, especially a young quarterback. So I think that you got to scrap the idea of letting Andy Dalton play and getting Bryce Young time to learn. Once again, Peyton Manning was trial by fire. You brought that up. They had no choice but to play Peyton Manning, but yet and still, there were times where Peyton Manning looked lethargic out there, but look how he turned out. But yet again, you also got to look at the physicalities of Peyton Manning as well, too, as compared to a Bryce Young. Peyton Manning's a big, tall, strong quarterback. Bryce Young is a smaller quarterback. But that's neither here nor there. But I still don't think you should throw the baby out with the bathwater with Bryce Young, because your team has a different identity with both of these quarterbacks. And what identity do you want to have is what it is. You know, Frank Reich having this squad, he's got to develop an identity. He's got to get that locker room as well, too, which is another thing. In the beginning of the year, the locker room was pretty much intact. Mm-hmm. But the Atlanta game came about, and then there we go. We kind of had that downhill effect. Frank Reich's got to grab these guys, let them know, which we'll probably get into later with his comments and things of that nature. But back to Bryce Young, don't scrap that young man yet. Don't do that. I mean, he's going to have some games where he's going to look good. But then again, you know, you got to look at this team. You got to look at these guys. You got to look at this team. The quarterback does get the praise and the criticism.
Yep.
With the win and the loss. That's the way of the beast. That's the way of the world. Yep. Bryce hasn't complained. He hasn't complained, or at least he hasn't complained to us.
Yeah.
Or he hasn't complained out to the open. He might have complained in that huddle. He might have complained in practice. We don't know. But as far as the public, no. He hasn't complained. You haven't seen him lose his mind with his players. Yeah. He still has more to go. And I don't think that they should let him go, like let him sit that easily.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. I again, watching what Andy Dalton was able to do in week 4, or I'm sorry, in week 3, I think there was some merit to it. Sitting him like Aaron Rodgers sat for a while before he took over from Brett Favre. Tom Brady took over for an injured. Why can't I say his name? Oh my gosh,
Drew Bledsoe.
Drew Bledsoe. Thank you, Drew Bledsoe. So you've got guys who were able to sit and learn and come in there. But I'm with you. You don't draft a guy number one, you don't start him. But I'm at this point, 4 games into the season, we're almost a fourth of the way through the season at this point, and well, we are a fourth of the season essentially, and I haven't seen the offense click with Bryce Young back there, so it's something we're going to have to see moving forward. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball because we talked about the fact going into the season that the defense is what the Panthers were going to have to rely on in order to keep them in games, and they did. We already talked about the Sam Franklin's 99-yard interception return. And an offense that's as electric as the Vikings are, they held Kirk Cousins to just 139 passing yards. They held leading rusher Alexander Mattison to under 100 yards rushing. They got 2 sacks in on Kirk Cousins. And then you look at Justin Jefferson. He did wind up with 2 touchdowns in this game, but 6 catches for 85 yards. Again, talking about the fact that the Panthers didn't score an offensive touchdown in this game, those 2 touchdowns from Cousins to Jefferson was all they had really on offense. Their winning touchdown essentially was that 51-yard fumble return by DJ Wanham with 4:09 left to go in the third quarter that gave the Vikings the lead that they never relinquished. Tell me what you think about what you saw from the defense, despite the fact that they lost this game.
The defense, I think, was held on an island. I think they were on an island. The thing about it is with teams that have a defensive identity is that most of these look at the great defenses of the days, the Tampa defense, the Tampa 2. You had Chicago's great defense. What I look at with those teams is that they had consistent and timely offenses, and that's what did it. Most of these guys didn't have great quarterbacks. You had Brad Johnson with that Tampa squad, and you had Jim McMahon with that Chicago squad. They were not the highest ranking quarterbacks by any means. Trent Dilfer with the Ravens defense that won the Super Bowl as well too. They were not high ranking quarterbacks, but they pretty much were told, do not mess up. Do not do anything fancy. Do not do anything foolish.
Manage the game. Yeah,
exactly. And that's what it is. Bryce Young has to figure out what he is. Is he the game managing quarterback, or is he the superstar type quarterback? What is he? That defense impressed me. That first half, they were lights out. They all 11 guys of the ball. They were hard to manage. Burns was hard to manage in that game. Shaq Thompson. Those guys were playing very, very good. And then, of course, the interception, which pretty much, and I saw it, and I was like, man, he ain't going nowhere. And then that wonderful block that they laid on Kirk Cousins when he was running after him, that man should have stopped. Don't hurt yourself, dog. Don't hurt yourself. But
yeah, you live to play another day. You live to play another day, man. Don't try to get cute. You got an offense that's relying on you.
Let him talk junk to you. Let him talk junk to you for stopping. But I'm sorry, man. But you get the license plate of that truck. That was a crash. It was.
That's fantastic.
But it's hard to say. I mean, that defense played very well. And, Justin Jefferson's going to get his yards. He's going to get his touchdowns regardless. It doesn't matter what defense he's playing. He's going to get his. He's probably one of the most dynamic receivers in the NFL right now. And I still think, in my opinion, that he has the wrong quarterback. But that's neither here nor there. But the defense played very, very well. It's just that they were left on an island. Points were left on the field with the Panthers offense, and that's what I think did them in. It wasn't the fact that they didn't play good. It was just the fact that the offense didn't bail them out.
Yeah. I mean, listen, again, we talked about the stats. I mean, Kirk Cousins had 19 pass attempts in this game. Leading rusher Alexander Mattison had 17 carries. So between those, I mean, what's that? 36 plays run that were designated for Cousins or Madison. Not to mention Cam Akers had a few carries in this game, but Kirk Cousins and his offense is electric. And you talk about Justin Jefferson getting his yards. He only had 85 yards in this game. The defense played good enough to win, but like you said, the offense didn't bail them out. If the offense was able to execute, I think the Panthers win this game. And unfortunately, considering the fact that the Vikings went into this game essentially without a defense, without a defensive identity, without any really big defensive playmakers that you've seen this season, the concern was that the Panthers didn't have a great offense. The Vikings didn't have a good defense. What are we going to see? And this is what we get, a 21-13 win by the Minnesota Vikings. I think it's promising. It shows promise considering all of the injuries on this Carolina Panthers defense, the fact that they were able to hold Kirk Cousins to under 200 passing yards, keep the running game under 100 rushing yards, and the star player, Justin Jefferson, to 85 yards, albeit with his 2 touchdowns. I like what I saw out of the defense in this game. And if they can continue to play up to this level against what, we could argue, because I'm with you. I'm not sure if Kirk Cousins is that guy, especially now. But against what are otherwise known as pretty elite offenses, if they can hold an elite offense like the Justin Jefferson-led Minnesota Vikings to 21 points, they're going to be able to keep themselves in games. And we're going to get to their schedule here in a minute. But again, very promising to see what we've seen from the defense. Let's go. Frank Reich had some things to say about starting off 0-4 this season on Monday. His quote reads, "I believe we are a young team that is developing and growing, even though we're here to win now. We are growing and developing, and that doesn't have to wait a year. We can grow in a season." That's Frank Reich basically saying that, yeah, we're 0-4, but we can still finish strong. I'm not sure if he's insinuating the Panthers make the playoffs or make a play at the division, because somehow the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are leading this division and can very well run away with this division at 9-7. Like, they can run away with this division at 9-7, which is crazy to me. What are your thoughts on the idea that Frank Reich thinks that this team still has promise and there's some potential for the Panthers to really, really rebound from an 0-4 start?
I don't think he's wrong. The thing that Frank Reich has to, and this is my opinion, this is coming from a man who's never coached professional football in his life. But I can say that developing a mindset is going to be the first thing when it comes down to winning. He's got to get his guys thinking, and it's an adverse time, but it's not an adverse time, if that makes sense. 0-4, you don't have a win in the win category. It could take one win. It could take one win to get these guys thinking. It could take one win. Once you start realizing that, you can instill a winning mindset in an adverse time by getting one win. It's like that game where the game is within reach. One score gets you back into it. One win in the win column will get you right back into it. So it's not out of reach. And I think that Frank Reich is not wrong, because this is a young squad that he's got to get going. Teams are developed with drafts. This team is a fairly newly drafted team. You're molding these guys together. You have to realize that if you get this mindset going, this team could really do some things out there. Yeah, they've got to get into that winning mindset. And Frank Reich has to find something in them in order to get them winning. Because if you look at their schedule, the games that they have aren't hard. And once again, you brought up the NFC South could be won by a 9-7 squad. Tampa is rebuilding as well too, or they look like they are. They appeared to be in the beginning. Atlanta was appearing to rebuild. This is a pretty much new NFC South, because you have 4 new starting quarterbacks on all 4 teams.
Yep.
Rip in Atlanta, Bryce Young in Carolina, Baker Mayfield in Tampa, and David Carr. Derek Carr. David Carr. Why I keep calling him that? But Derek Carr in New Orleans. I mean, who could be easily replaced with Jameis if he keeps it up? Who knows? Yes. But I mean, you have a new look everywhere.
To your point, I think Reich also went on to make a comment about getting the leaders to step up and to show some leadership in the locker room, because you're going to again, at 0-4, you're going to have to rally together at some point. Now, you mentioned that the Panther schedule. You mentioned it having some easy games ahead. At least the next 2 games aren't that easy. They're at the Lions this weekend and at the Dolphins next weekend. Now, I know the Dolphins are coming off of a really bad loss at Buffalo, but the week prior, the Dolphins dropped 70 points on the Denver Broncos. That might not be as remarkable at this point, considering that the Bears were able to put up 30 some odd points on the Broncos defense. However, the Dolphins are a very good football team. With or without the 70-point game, they're a very good football team. You've got the Lions, the Dolphins before the bye, and then you get the matchup between C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. up the following week. And then you get to see Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson as the Panthers host the Colts. Obviously, you got some easier games on the schedule. You're at the Bears, but then you get the Cowboys, who, despite their loss to Arizona, are another very good football team in the NFC. You're at the Titans, who somehow just beat up on Cincinnati, but we don't know what Cincinnati is this year.
Right.
You're at the Buck. You get 2 games against the Bucks to finish the year. You're at the Saints, who have already beaten you at home, and the Falcons, who have already beat you this year. And then you look at the other teams, the Packers and the Jags, who, again, we don't really know who they are quite yet. Jordan Love for the Packers looking better than I expected him to.
Yes.
But, I mean, you look at the schedule. You get Lions, Dolphins before the bye, Texans, Colts, at Bears. If you had to make a guess, where do you think their first win comes?
I think that Chicago is probably going to be the one that does it for the Panthers. I hope it's sooner. I really hope it's sooner, but I really don't see that Bears squad beating the Panthers, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Chicago, I think Justin Fields might have been a product of a great receiving core at Ohio State. I think that's what he is. I mean, Chicago has really, really tried to give it to Justin Fields, and they've tried to do it. And with an NFC North that doesn't have Aaron Rodgers in it, which I hate what happened to him. That's unfortunate what happened to him. I hate that. But that NFC North is a wide open conference, but it looks like Detroit might take it. Minnesota was the one that actually was supposed to be the favorite in the NFC North, but it didn't happen. It's looking like Detroit will more than likely take it from them. And good enough for them, because Detroit's had to really scratch and claw for that. But the Bears have pretty much looked like they've been the bottom feeder. And it's very, very hard to not look at that game and not think that Carolina could easily walk away with it.
So the crazy thing about that is if the Bears is their first win on the year, that Bears game puts them at 1-8 on the season. They would be 0-8 going into that game. I don't see them beating the Cowboys the following week. At this rate, I don't see them beating the Titans. I mean, is a 4-win season, because you got to think they might be able to take one of the games from the Bucks. We don't know what the Jags are going to be late in the season, and then the same thing with the Packers. We don't know if the Packers are going to fall from the perch that they're on with Jordan Love, albeit their most recent loss to the Lions. Is it out of the realm of possibilities for the Panthers to finish the year with 3 or 4 wins?
I don't think so. I don't think it's out of the realm. I mean, because, this team came in with a lot of hype in the beginning, like, with the way that they were making off-season moves. And, the 0-4 is kind of daunting after all the talk from this year. And that's what I always say, you play the games on the field and not on paper.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, though, I would hope that maybe they might steal it from Detroit, or they might steal it from Miami. I mean, albeit Miami looks like a very sexy team right now, especially on the offensive end. The way that I look at it, though, I think that may be the possibility, but I really, really hope I'm wrong. I really have love for my home team. I am a 49ers fan, of course, but watching the home team is something that I do more than I do with my 49ers, because I get the games on TV. So I watch the Panthers, and I make sure to see the Panthers while they're playing, and I want them to win. I want to see the wins come in. But, with a squad this young and with new pieces, a new coach, a new coaching staff, you got to build with drafts. Free agency is wonderful, but drafts are something that you got to build with. And I think that might be the mind frame that the Panthers may be having, especially with the fluid draft that they could be having in another couple of years. But Frank Reich did say they were built to win now. So you're going to have to uphold yourself. And Detroit, although Detroit was a laughingstock at one point in time, Detroit is starting to get it together. Once again, a team that was in Carolina's position at one point in time is now starting to get it. And look where they are.
Yeah, we're going to get to Detroit in just a second. I do want to mention the most unfortunate part about drafting is that right now, as it stands, thanks to the trade in order to acquire Bryce Young in the draft. Currently, the Chicago Bears have both the number 1 and the number 2 draft picks in this coming year's NFL draft, as well as if the Panthers do continue on this path and finish with 3 or 4 wins, there's a high likelihood that the Bears could retain the number 1 and the number 2 draft pick going forward. We're up against it. Let's talk real quick. You mentioned you think that you'd like to see the Lions steal one here against the Panthers. Sunday, 1:00 kickoff. The Lions, I can't believe I'm saying this, are a 9.5-point favorite at home against the Carolina Panthers. I'm not going to ask if you think they're going to win, because I personally don't think the Carolina Panthers win this game. Now, granted, their defense, if they can shut down Kirk Cousins, I think they can sort of control, I wouldn't say control the game, but I think they can limit what Jared Goff does with this offense. Now, they get Jamison Williams back this week from a suspension that was lifted thanks to the new gambling rules in the NFL. David Montgomery, when healthy, has looked like an amazing running back for this Detroit Lions team. And we still haven't seen the full extent of what Jahmyr Gibbs can do. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is basically this year the new Cooper Kupp or last year's Puka Nacua, if you will. So the Lions are very explosive on offense, but their defense has been porous at times this year. 3-1 on the season, with their only loss coming in overtime against Seattle. So I'm not going to ask if you think Carolina Panthers wins this game. I want to know if you think if Carolina covers this 9.5-point spread.
I want to say no. I don't like saying that because, I really thought that Detroit would probably win the NFC North this year. I don't trust Minnesota. Never trusted Minnesota. Chicago, I knew what they were from the beginning. But Green Bay, once again, is Jordan Love going to be what he is? But he's out there balling. He's playing. But I think that Detroit right now is on a mission. And I hate to say that. And that's weird. I don't hate to say it, but it's just weird. It's weird saying, oh, Detroit's on a mission. Are you sure about that? You're talking about the Pistons, right? You're talking about the Pistons.
The Pistons. Right? Come on. That's hilarious. Oh, that's awesome.
It's weird to say. It really is. It's very weird to say, but I really think they're on a mission. They see that they can win the NFC North, and the NFC North crown is tangible to them. And I think that they're going to be on a mission. I think that they win this game decisively. I hope I'm wrong. Once again, I hope I'm wrong. But I think they win it decisively.
I'm right there with you. I just want to see, if I'm a Panthers fan, I want to see Bryce Young execute the offense and find and score points.
Yes.
If the offense is not going to execute and finish drives with points, then the Panthers are probably going to finish the year with 3 or 4 wins, and without having a first round draft pick, a very long offseason for the Carolina Panthers. Shannon Smith, I want to thank you for being on the show this week. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I hope to have you on the show later on. Thanks for being here, bud.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Folks, if you want to find me on social media, I do my own show, Tap Outs and Touchdowns, Pro Wrestling Mondays, Football Wednesdays, at Tap Outs and TDs on Twitter, Facebook.com/tapouts and touchdowns. Banker Bill and I will be live this week talking more all things football. College football had a pretty fun weekend. The NFL's got some fun stuff coming up, so make sure you check us out there. But until then, feel free to exit the cat cave until next week. But listen to more content on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel and more Carolina-centric podcasts on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network. For Shannon Smith, I'm Ryan Frick, and we'll see you next week right back here in the Cat Cave.